Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar, a wool industry update from AWEX. My name is Jodie Rizzo-O'Brien, and I'm one of the SheepConnect Sa team. I would just like to acknowledge the people that support SheepConnect program, Australian Wool Innovation, the SA Sheep Industry Fund, the Department of Primary Industries and Regions. If you'd like more information about SheepConnect, you can go to our website or you can follow us on Twitter. Today's webinar is being recorded and we'll upload that recording to the SheepConnect Sa YouTube channel in the coming days. We welcome you to revisit the webinar yourself and share it with colleagues. Today's presenter is Mark Grave. Mark is the CEO at Australian Wool Exchange, commonly known as AWEX. Mark's been there for 19 years and has been actively involved in a number of programs, including National Wool Declaration and its Integrity Program, eBale, Wool Clip, which is the on-farm capture of wool data and traceability, wool classing standards, market reporting and information, and AWEX ID. At this time, I'll hand over to Mark, who will give us a wool industry update from AWEX. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks very much. I wanted to talk today. I was given writing instructions about issues that might be of interest, and so a lot of the information that you will receive today or hear today relate to either market information, some of the services and infrastructure that we work with, and also integrity and traceability, all of which are topical at the moment. For those that don't know who we are, anyone that is a wool classer will be well aware of AWEX from a classer registration point of view. As an organisation, we've been around this is our 30th year, and classing, information and standards, quality assurance standards, are a big part of the type of work that we've done in that time. And what I'm hoping today, and certainly welcome any of the questions, will give you a bit more detail on some of the more relevant and more current issues that we are working with at the moment. The National Wool Declaration has gone through various iterations. When it first commenced in 2008, it was a very sensitive issue. It was very topical. It still remains topical, but certainly less sensitivity about it, because we're now starting to see consistent market signals come through on the declaration on wool that is declared. We're currently up to version 9.3, and over that time, over the 8 previous versions, we've updated it to make sure that it remains relevant to the types of issues that our customers of wool are looking for. So in the most recent edition, which was only introduced in July this year, we've included the option of identifying or declaring whether wool or sheep have been treated with liquid nitrogen. The intent of actually having this is to inform the market and also to hopefully send appropriate market signals back to you. Over the last 2 or 3 years in particular, electronic classer software, either through WoolQ or ourselves with Wool Clip, have been very important in making sure that relevant documents are kept up to date. One of the issues the industry has is that a lot of the paper-based information can easily become out of date. So it is important that in an industry where our customers, our buyers and processors are looking for the latest information, that we do keep up to date, and electronically, and we'll discuss this later, is a good way to do it because it is always current. The important part about the NWD is the adoption rate or declaration rate. Our intent with the NWD has always been to make sure that we have an informed market. So if a buyer is wanting to purchase wool of any particular type, we don't make a judgment on what they purchase, but we want to make sure that they actually have credible information in front of them. And that's an important part of what the declaration represents. Behind the declaration, there is an integrity program which validates the information that is declared. Now, we've been doing that since 2008. We have been inspecting on farm since 2010. So we've managed to pull up a fair profile and consistent, I suppose, level of confidence that our buyers and customers have in the NWD itself. Most people would be aware of the declaration sitting at the bottom of the paper specification, but the blue section is really what the declaration is about. We use that to make sure that whatever is declared on paper is consistent with the rules and expectations of our buying customers, and whatever is transmitted is also consistent with what has been declared. That might sound a little bit mundane and boring, and sometimes it can be, but it's important that the buyers of Australian wool have confidence in the information that they are looking for and would like to purchase. So that's an important part. So it's one thing to have a declaration, it's the integrity program that sits behind it that creates the level of credibility that our buying market, our buyers are actually looking for. If it's not the first question, it's usually the second question, and that is, why am I doing it, and is there any premium in the market for it? Back in 2008, we were very long on saying the good reasons why we should declare without actually having the market signals in place. We now have had a dozen years under our belt where we are now starting to see consistent pricing levels for each declaration type. So on the screen in front of you, we're looking at fleece wool. And if you look at the very top under the non-mule section and season 2021, which is the season just gone, you can see that we have 70, 80, 60, 50 cents premium above a non-declared lot. Sorry, a declared mules lot. So it's important to understand that there are varying pricing levels depending on the market and depending on the declaration that's provided. Now, these are average numbers. You'll probably hear from some of the selling agents and from the buyers that there are higher premiums in place for different types of wool. That the 78 cents that I can see in front of you for 16 micron isn't as high as it should be, but these are averages over a given season. And we do know that there is quite a range that varies between over that season, depending on the market, depending on the other specifications of the wool itself. But the important part here is there are consistent market signals that are coming back to you, back to your selling agents, and understood by buyers and their colleagues that exist in the market today. We've seen over the journey, and it's been, as I said, it's been quite a long process, but we have seen improved declaration rates, and we're currently seeing 75, or at the close of last season, 75% of wool which has been declared, regardless of the type of declaration that's been made. So non-mules, cease mules, AA, which is the old pain relief, those that have declared mules, and those that do not declare. So if somebody has not declared, we can't assume what mulesing status that might have. That's not what we do, and that's not what the industry wants. They want to know a declaration from you as a wool grower, because the information you provide is very important to them. So we've seen that change and evolve over time. We've seen big movements in the use of pain relief, increasing and improving adoption of non-mules as people transition between one enterprise to another, and they will make that business decision based on the information and environment that you have in front of you. So in a wet year like this, well, I'm assuming it's wet where you are, but in a wet year like this, the business decisions that you make about the welfare of your sheep may be different to other years, which, for argument's sake, could be very dry. But what's important here is to make sure that you understand that there is information in the market now that would help you assess and make that inform you so that you can make that business decision. One of the key questions here is about by state. By state, declarations adoption rates really do change. And what you can see in front of you here, and particularly looking at the 2021 column, which is third from the right, is that the eastern states of Australia have always been, and at the cutting edge, if you like, or the high adoption edge for declaration of wool. Regardless of the declaration status, they have been in the 80s to mid to high 80s% of all wool that's been declared. WA has come and started from a low base, but at the same time it is a very different business enterprise on farm in WA as opposed to other states. But the importance here is that the declaration rate for South Australia, let's say, is 81.3%. That was last year. And that has been consistently high or consistently up in the top end of adoption and declaration rates with other eastern states. And that's irrespective of micron group, breed type, etc. So why do we do it? It was clear that the exporters wanted more information about mulesing status. And that was coming through strongly. We don't have an objective way of doing it, of measuring mulesing status. So it really does rely on you as a wool grower and how you might declare or what you might declare for the enterprise that you run. We know now that particularly over the last 2.5 years, probably 3 years, we have exporters who will come to us after a sale and want to validate and verify the lots they have just purchased to go into a specific order. Now that can be just a non-mulesed order. It might be a non-mulesed cease mulesed order, a pain relief or an AA order. But what they're wanting to make sure is that the wool that they have purchased meets the criteria of the batch that they have just put together. And our recent experiences suggest that if the wool is not the right declaration rate or it's proven to be non-compliant or it's wrong, then they will remove that lot from their purchase and need to seek either go without it or they'll actually look for other wool to take its place. And we have seen where exporters have made claims for purchases that they have made against the broker to make sure that they do receive exactly what they are expecting to purchase. So it comes with a little bit of a sting in the tail, but this really just amplifies the fact that exporters want the integrity value, the validation of the lots that they are purchasing, whether it's for micron, whether it's for yield, length and strength, or whether it's for mulesing status in this particular case. And this is often a daily and weekly occurrence for us. Some of these orders are quite big. So if somebody's putting together a batch of, in this case, 700 plus bales of wool, that's a significant purchase that they have to make. And therefore it's a significant order and obviously a significant customer. So they want to make sure that they have actually got the right wool for the right order that will give their customer confidence and can confirm their relationship with that customer. Now, one of the more recent interesting parts is about that we get quite often asked about is certified integrity schemes. There are a number in the place. RWS is certainly a large scheme. We ourselves have Sustainable. There's also Authentico, and they are probably the most of the three prevalent sustainability schemes. And what we're trying to represent here is over a period of a week, we're looking at non-mulesed and non-mules certified integrity scheme wool. The grey dots that you can see in front of you are for the various micron groups, which runs along the bottom, and this pricing is on the left-hand side. We're looking at the average price on any given set of days over a particular week. The grey dots are those that are non-mulesed wool, and I use non-mulesed wool because schemes like RWS and Authentico will only accept non-mulesed wool. But non-mulesed wool in a given day, the green dots are actually those that belong to certified integrity schemes. So that could be for and this I know from experience and on fact that this was a particular clip, a mid-micron clip of quite a large size that was obviously keenly sought after. But we saw in the marketplace on that day anywhere up to 300, 400, 500 cent premium based on the order, based on the wool, based on the certified integrity scheme. And you can see how that can influence the market. The red triangle, which I hope you can see on your screen, is what the micron point, the average micron point would be, pricing point would be for that particular micron wool. So you can see that the grey is fairly consistent with the red triangle, but the green can be anywhere from below the red triangle to well above. And what it tends to do, or can do, is distort the market. So what we have done is remove certified integrity schemes from the normal non-mulesed quotes. And in the next week or two, we'll be releasing a certified integrity scheme, CIS, micron price guides. So that will actually give others the opportunity to weigh up where the certified integrity schemes sit compared to other non-declared or non-integrity scheme wool. So you'll see that come across in the next week or two. It is important because it can distort the market quite significantly if we left them in. But equally, by taking them out, one of the challenges we have is, as a market reporting organisation, is that sometimes there are very limited types of wool in that particular sector of the market. And that can be a little bit confusing and a little bit difficult to pin the tail on the right donkey. But this gives you, again, in 1 week, how the microns and non-mules declarations work, in this case from 15 through to 21.5 micron, and how the integrity scheme fits within those micron bands for non-mulesed wool. They are significantly high, but again, it will depend on market and will depend on the type of wool in that particular market as well. Is it appropriate to stop there, Jody, Michelle, just to see if there are questions relating to that before I move on?
Yeah, actually, that's very timely because I have got there's a couple that have come in. Are you expecting a big difference between the two, i.e. non-mulesed compared to those integrity schemes?
Look, I've given an example here of where there is a big difference, and you will expect that there will be a difference because we know at the market at the moment the buying pressure for certified integrity scheme wool is quite strong. So the answer is yes, I would expect it to be higher. The question is how much higher and will it be consistent? And even in that chart that's in front of you, you can see that everyone looks for the higher numbers because that's where we all want to be. But there's quite a few of the green dots there that are actually among the other grey dots. So it will vary quite a bit depending on the market and on the day.
Another question coming about the green. Mark, were the green dots equal or below the red and grey dots classed clips, or were they mostly unclassed clips?
No, look, they are all classed clips. That we do know. There is some discussion around, there are some schemes that don't necessarily put a value on classing, but in this case, they were all classed clips. So I think the dots, and this is a good thing about a visual like what we're looking at, is that, what do they say? A picture paints 1,000 words, and I think this one does.
Fantastic. I had a question that was right from the beginning, Mark. Why is the declaration rate only like across all the states 75%? We've obviously got there's obviously a group there that are not declaring. Any insight into that?
Look, if you get down to, you can start to slice the information to get deeper and deeper, or deep dive as they call it. There's certainly a number of in the merino sector, there's or merino wool, which is effectively 22.5 micron, 23 micron and finer. The declaration is consistently high. If we remove West Australia, because they still have a bit to do to catch up, it's consistently high. I think the crossbred market tends to be a challenging one because a number of wool growers in the crossbred market are either seeing a very flat or low price at the moment and wondering, well, why am I bothering to do this? And the declaration rates are not great, not as high in crossbreds. And I think it's really market influenced. So there's some of the challenges we have to make sure that our industry, whether it's crossbred or merino, declare and provide enough information for our customers to make their purchasing decisions.
Fantastic. And one last one before we move on. When, i.e. which sale week, were the certified clip prices removed from the MPG calculations?
Good question, but and I'll stand corrected and I'll come back to you on it, Jody, but I'm pretty sure it was just after the recess, which the recess would mean it would be about the first week in August. But I'll certainly come back and confirm that for you.
No worries. Thank you. Yep, that's all the questions I've got at this stage. But, you know, guys, people listening online, please send them through. They're great questions. Thanks,
Yep.
Mark.
No problem. Thank you. So what I'm going to talk about now is something we've been, as a company, have been pursuing now for some years. In fact, the very first iteration went back, dare I say, 6 or 7 years ago. But it's looking at how can we capture on-farm information in data form in an efficient and, I suppose, improving the accuracy of the data that we have. We have a program called WoolClip. Now, WoolClip is made up of a web-based, but also an app that synchronizes to the web, and it can be used in shed, on farm, remote. It works offline, but the intent here is to make sure that we can capture information on farm, and particularly as we head towards greater traceability through RFID, which are decisions which are being considered by industry right at this very moment. So what is it? Well, I'm not going to read that to you, but I've said what it is. The idea is that you can work in a shed with either a smartphone, or in this case on the picture is an iPad, and be able to input the data that you would normally use in a wool book. So that image is actually of a WoolClip wool book, and that would then in turn enable that information to be transmitted direct to the broker of choice, either in PDF or printable form, or in data form so that they can download it into their system. The reason we're doing this is that one of the cries from industry, and particularly from the brokers, is the inconsistent manner in which they've been receiving WoolClip data, so the specifications that come in. It's either not timely, so they can't do anything with the wool, or there's double counting of bales and bale numbers, or the information is incomplete. One of the real benefits of actually having an electronic form of capture is that you can do all of this and make sure that the information that is sent to the broker, which is really your information, and it's ensuring that your wool is able to be sold as soon as possible, if that's your choice. But it's sent to them accurately, you've got a permanent record, and it allows the greater efficiency within the industry itself. So it's all about making sure that the data that's coming out of the shed is complete with the integrity intact, so that it can start its journey through the supply chain, or in this case, the value chain. It will help you reduce errors. As I said, the duplication of bale numbers, or incorrect or incomplete national wool declarations, are good examples that cause a lot of energy and time correcting, following up, making sure that the information is exactly as it should be. It's one of the other bugbears, I suppose, of brokers, is that quite often our handwriting, and I know I'm terrible at it, is that our handwriting is not as easy to decipher as it should be. So having a legible piece of a specification, because it will be printed, having the data that can be downloaded once rather than actually handwritten, then data entry at a second point reduces the number of errors. The tying to the NWD is also part of that, having the correct information at the right time. And you can start to make, once you get confidence in these types of systems, the benefits of what you'll get out of it will only grow. We've developed the WoolClip to be able to read RFID, well, not the RFID, but a QR code. And if I go back to that image, you'll see on that bale, there's a blue label. The blue label is the prototype, is what we'll be going to commercial use once the industry gives us their support. The QR code will be read on farm, and what you can't see in that image is an RFID, which sits behind the label that will be used in warehouses, wherever that might be. And the interesting thing here is that not only will it be used in warehouses in Australia, but also by our processor customers, regardless in what country that they might be. We've had interest in use of the RFID from China, from Europe, and so forth. So there's great interest in creating greater efficiencies, better use of time and materials as we go through the supply chain. In many ways, wool clip was developed to be very similar in concept to what we see in a wool shed today, in the normal classing stationery. So there is a wool book. There is you develop your mobs just like you would on your specification. You enter your bales one by one as they're being pressed out of the wool press itself. And I suppose the ability to capture the QR code, the unique bale ID, is something you can't do with a paper speci, and that will become important as traceability gets even larger than it does today. But also you can automatically print or automatically generate a wool classes specification, and that takes the hassle out of going back through the wool book, making sure that you've got every bale and every line correctly itemised. The aim here is to try and make the job easier, even though it's different. The information is the same, but the process of going through and entering it in on software or in an app or on the web is different to actually using a piece of paper or the booklets that you get. So it's important to know that what you can do is that as growers, you can set up your own account, and this is private information that only you need to know. And we work with brokers to ensure that the accounts that you're setting up, that you're known to the broker of choice. They confirm that. That's part of the I suppose the protocol we have to make sure that you are a valid account. And the information, which is the specification, the data, only goes to that broker that you have chosen. And in some cases, it might be multiple, but again, you can actually set up and separate the wool that is going to broker A or broker B or broker C. So you're seeing in front of you there, that is how the app looks. That is the way that you would actually enter, or the type of screen that you would enter the information on. And I think of recent time, the most notable change of late, and you may have had this discussion, Jody, I'm not sure, is that we've been working closely with, we've had AWI, we've had very constructive and discussions about how we might proceed together and collaboratively to make sure that we are working from an industry point of view to improve the information flow from industry. And I'm hoping it'll be at the end of December, that's our target date, that growers will have the option of sending their wool information through to WoolQ if that is your choice. So it's important that AWI and ourselves are working together. WoolClip will be the on-farm tool that will send information to wherever it is that you wish it to go. So if it's going to the broker, if it's going to go to WoolQ, you will have those options and you will have that control. And that will hopefully provide greater benefit to you as a grower and to the industry for better transfer of information and much cleaner and more accurate data than we've had in the past. And you'll hear a lot more about that as we get closer to officially making the software changes or the changes that are necessary. From our point of view, one of the key issues is that we have two very experienced people who just so happen to have been in South Australia most of last week, from Kangaroo Island through to Burra and Murray Bridge. And in that photo, you can see Fiona Rawley, who's our wool classer registrar, and John Cox, who is our wool clip program leader. And they are very knowledgeable. They're a great asset to this industry. and they would do anything to help you set yourself up and get going with wool clip. It's an important opportunity for the industry because the pressure on information, the pressure on accuracy and integrity of data will only increase, and it is much better to have the tools in place, which we do now, and the technology to support exactly what we are aiming to do. Jody, are there any questions on that before I move on to RFID?
I've got a couple of wool clip questions. One is, what percentage of bales are currently specified via wool clip?
We have, again, this is organic growth for you. We're currently running, I think last year was about 87,000 bales were put through wool clip. We know that's not a lot out of a 1.6, 1.8 million bale industry. We're running probably close to 50% or 40 to 50% higher this year on year at the moment. And since the announcements of our collaborative piece with AWI and WoolQ, and also the more recent announcements we're working towards with RFID or e-bale, as we call it, the interest and expectations are growing. So I'm actually very bullish on where that will be. I think sorry, just to finish off on that, Jody, is that we're finding that the level of interest in e-bale is also driving the interest in wool clip. There's no point in having an electronically enabled wool pack unless you can make use of it, both on farm and in warehouses. So the interest is coming at both levels here, from grower level, but also from brokers as well.
Excellent. Interesting times. The next question is about using the QR code with a secondary press that doesn't have built-in scales. Can you complete wool clip without a weight, which they can't currently weigh it with a secondary press?
No, look, it's a good question, one we get all the time. It does require a weight to go in because it will provide you with some analytics. We know it's not a certified weight, but most wool books will have written in them an estimated weight as well. The key part here is that we're trying to make sure that industry there are expectations on standards for minimum and maximum bale weights. So having scales in place, or the ability to weigh a bale, is actually a very important part of work health safety and ensuring that we meet the standards of the industry. So at this stage, still, it will require a weight.
Thank you. That's all the questions I've got at this stage. Thanks.
Thank you. As I've sort of touched on, and I'll look at the bale that Fiona and John are looking at the moment, you can see again it is a blue template label on it with 2 QR codes. What actually sits behind that is an RFID. Now, the arrow that I've got pointed here is pointing at that dot. I'm not sure if you can make it out on your screen. That is the actual chip. So in the old days, and I say the old days, I'm old enough to remember, when we first ventured down this road, a chip was probably about the size of your fingernail, one of your smaller fingernails. And the antenna, which you can see here as a black outline, used to be a coil, coils and coils. You broke one wire on that coil and the RFID itself became useless. It was redundant. What we have now, technology, like many things, has improved, and the ability to have a tag that actually has an RFID tag, which actually has more flexibility, is less vulnerable to movement. We know that the life of a wool bale is not necessarily an easy one, and will survive everything from working in it, being in a wool shed in pastoral zones, on transports, carried around by forklifts and core machines, and being dumped and surviving out the other side is actually really an important part of the product itself. We're confident in the technology. There's been no doubt about that. We've been working with either adhering tags independently, or we've been looking at we actually purchased or produced, 1,000 wool packs to try them and trial them in commercial, real life shed and warehouse situations. And they survive extremely well. So we're confident in that. What we're looking to do and what we are currently doing at the moment is writing to industry to ensure that we actually have the support to proceed. And that's really the critical point we are at this particular moment. We don't want to impose this on anybody or anyone. It has to be an industry-led approach, and it also has to be a whole of industry approach, because that gives you the best opportunity to have economies of scale. And if you run a warehouse, or if you're running your own farm, if you've got half of the wool bales that have technology and the other half that don't, you soon wish that they were either one way or the other. And the industry is, particularly the commercial side of the industry off farm, is working towards a more commercial approach to technology and eventually automation. So that is the label that we are talking about. That's on a pack that is being produced and available to be used. Right below this outline or this terrible looking circle I'm making, is where the RFID sits. Now you can see the two QR codes. We've placed them in those specific positions for two reasons. Number one, they're the two least likely places for a QR code to crease. And the same goes for the RFID, which sits behind that QR code half and half, and in that position. So not only is it the least likely place for it to be creased, it's the least likely place for it to be damaged. And if somebody has a bale hook and tends to, if you want to try and split the atom and hit that chip, good luck, because you'll never, the opportunities or the likelihood of actually connecting with that chip are extremely, extremely low. The other thing that we do too is that if for some reason the chip itself is damaged, QR codes might be slightly obscured. If you can see underneath there's actually a 10-digit number. So in the absence of those not being able to read the two QR codes, in the absence of not being able to read the RFID, then the other option is to input the 10-digit number on the underneath the QR codes, because that represents a similar number that's in the QR code and the chip itself. So all the chip actually carries is a 23-character number, a unique number. Through Bullclip, we validate that number to know that it is a number. We supply the numbers, we receive them, and they are registered effectively. And it's all part of this integrity checking and validation that we do on a daily and weekly basis. In terms of how it would look, this man and his truck is just scanning bales. He can actually pick which bales are where. And this is where the software side, and this is what the broker or warehouse is doing or will do, is develop systems to be able to take advantage of wool as it's received, wool as they send it out the door to be dumped or to be containerized. And there are many ways that can be done. This, for those that have seen it before, is just an example of, this was an example of one, this fellow here was, the first time he actually did this was he's reading how many bales are in this particular stack, this batch. And the point here is that they have a very good read range. You can do it quickly and efficiently. And in that space, I think you'll come up with a number shortly, he has just read 116 bales. Yep, 116 bales in that particular batch. Now, from a commercial point of view, you could see how that would be an advantage to improving efficiencies in warehouses. Now, that's only just one part of it, but at the same time, you're matching that bale number with the information that's been recorded against it on Woolclip. And that's how you get greater integrity, greater validation, and improved traceability. It's not traceability in itself, but it enables traceability to be improved. Jody, any?
Yeah, a couple of questions. One is, what's the e-bale pack supply situation like? And then the secondary one that comes with that is, what's the cost or the additional cost?
We haven't introduced it commercially as yet. We're waiting to receive support from industry for that to take place. So when that does take place, there will be a window of probably about 6 months where the non-RFID label will not be able to be purchased. Only RFID labels will be purchased. And there'll be a 6-month window for any wool packs that are overseas and in storage or in stock will be able to be imported into the country. So there's a staged approach to how this would be introduced. We haven't given it the green light yet for the reasons as we are talking to most stakeholders, as many as we possibly can, to ensure that we get the support to introduce and implement e-bale itself. In terms of cost, it will add probably another, I expect, in the order of 60 cents per wool pack. And that's for the technology itself. You know, the expectation is that for an industry like wool, when we talk about 1.789 million wool bales produced in a year, in global markets, that's not a very high volume. So we would be looking to make a longer term commitment to ensure that we can improve the price of the RFID, the purchasing power, to minimise the impact of the cost of the label itself. So it's one of those questions which is absolutely the right question to ask. I think when I first started talking about this so many years ago now, the expectation was that we would always be round about an extra $1 or $1 per pack. That's not the case. It's significantly less than that. And I'm hoping it will be about 60 cents, depending on dollar value, etc.
Excellent. One more in relation to the RFID, and the question is, how is it going to differ from what we're using in sheep currently with EID tags?
Yeah, it's a good question. I right at the very start, when we, this is the overnight sensation that's taken nearly 25 years to do. I remember the very first meetings about RFID. It was a project called Intrawool that came out of Europe, and back in the late 90s. And then life moved on and we went to Sheep ID. And unfortunately, the technology that's used for Sheep ID is not suitable for using for wool. So the RFID in wool is what our expectation is, that it will be used in commercial warehouses. And that is why we also have the QR code, which can be read by any smartphone. And that can be used on farm, whether it's online, offline, doesn't matter. It will be able to be read on farm just using the normal smartphone, an Apple or an Android device.
Excellent. Someone wants to know if you can put an RFID chip in Rouseys and wool classes, but we won't expect you to answer that one.
I think it's a bit like our dogs and cats, etc. I'll ask I'll pass that on that one, I think.
Certainly our dog gets read by the, you can certainly read them with the wands at the moment. So yeah.
The main differences are for the RFID and why we use an ultra high frequency is that wool carries a fair bit of moisture. Not only does it carry moisture, which makes it difficult for reading, if you dump 3 bales together in a tri-pack, you want to be able to read the RFID within the tri-pack, which is under pressure. Whereas a sheep ID on a sheep ear doesn't have that those two same criteria that they've got to meet. And I suppose for our purposes, the ultra high frequency is also important because it doesn't have any collision. You don't lose it if you've got 2 bales together. You can actually look at them both individually. We found that some of the sheep ID wasn't quite as precise as that, but it was really built around the life of the bale from farm through the dump container and overseas to make sure it can meet all our needs.
Great. I've got one more general question. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Mark, before we?
No, I think I've probably added a fair bit here.
Yep.
So I'm happy to take questions or for people to contact us through you, Jodie, of course, later.
No, that's fine. The other question I had was that had come in is a more general question about how does declarations in Australia compare to our counterparts overseas? So, say New Zealand, or other countries. Like, are you able to put some context around how it works?
Well,
Australia versus them.
Yes, no, it's one of those challenging questions because we know that Australia and mulesing have had a long history. Other countries don't have that mulesing status issue to deal with. They don't have the blowfly. They don't have the process of mulesing itself. So we're unique in that situation. But we're also the biggest supplier of apparel wool around the world. So it's important that we have an informed market. We can't compare ourselves in size to a New Zealand or even a South Africa just by our sheer size. So it's important, again, that we're addressing the issue that was so sensitive all those years ago, because it's still a requirement not only of our buyers in that time, but we talked about integrity schemes. That's certainly front of mind, for a number of them. And having a declaration is the best way to capture that information.
Oh, and the question sort of flows on from that one. Do other countries have comparable e-bale systems in play, or will AWEX market these to the world?
It's an interesting concept, isn't it? I suppose that's why we're called the Australian Wool Exchange. No other country that I'm aware of has a comprehensive approach to electronic bale ID, which there are proprietary schemes that some brokers might have internally, where they apply their own RFID. But I think the point here is that to be on the cutting edge, to be a world leader like Australian wool industry is, then this will put us again well and truly ahead of the pack. So no, there aren't any other countries I'm aware of that actually have anywhere near a similar system, and this will be a first. As for marketing it to the world, let's get it into Australia first, I think.
Fantastic. There's a couple of other questions from growers in relation to the E and QR codes, but what I might do is with WoolClip, I might put those growers in contact with the AWEX people to answer those specific questions that they have in relation to that.
That'd be great. And John, and if I've got his information there somewhere, but if you speak to John Cox, he's at any time, John is a great person to be in contact with. He's very practitioner, and he'd be very keen to talk to you.
I would just like to thank everyone who's joined us for today's webinar. Mark, I thank you for sharing your insight and expertise with us all. If you come up with additional questions in the next few days, or maybe when you go to bed tonight, please contact me directly using the contact information on your webinar registration, and I'll pass those on and we'll get an answer to you. I thank everyone for their time this evening, and have a lovely evening. Thank you.